it's very nice and pleasant to see so many people here. I'm hoping for more, of course, because I think seriously this topic must be tackled much more often, because we are facing so many challenges nowadays, and in the future, upcoming challenges. So I think this topic must be raised more globally, not only locally. It's been raised maybe in the Middle East, more in the Southern Europe, but we need also really to talk more about this topic. Actually, it's an ongoing project that started with me for I think in 2017, with series of lectures, series of projects and exhibitions, competitions, and research papers and projects. What I would like to start with today is actually to highlight that this is a thinking discourse. It's not like really a serious lecture. It's just some thoughts that I wanted to raise and talk about the future of the Mediterranean. So it's really more about raising questions rather than answering ones. And this is, I think this is the point nowadays, especially with this COVID-19 and the several problems we have worldwide. That's what I'll try to do today. Of course, always when we talk about the Mediterranean, we always start by speaking about the population of the Mediterranean, which was between the 20th century until the beginning of the 21st century was raised from 280 to about 470. And this is around the Mediterranean, across 22 countries around the Mediterranean coast. And 1/3 of this, of course, population is on the cities, just at the interface of the Mediterranean. But the question really is, if this is the population now, and it's increasing rapidly every day, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's in the future? That's why I raised several questions about the forces that produce the transformation in the of course, the physical urban form of the cities around the Mediterranean. I raised the question of how can these hesitant socioeconomic and geopolitical factors play a constructive role in the distribution of the population across the Mediterranean. Not only because now with the globalization, it's actually reaching to Eastern Asia, towards, of course, America. And most importantly, at the end, how could cities nowadays adapt to the uprising trends in the constant changes in the whole Mediterranean region? The study started 3 or 4 years ago by going through actually many references, books, articles, reports, and studying how the Mediterranean basin as a whole was transformed over time, from the pre-industrial era until, I don't know where we are now. Maybe we are somewhere here between the urbanization and the post-urban era, which is still actually vague. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. And this, as I said, was done through several research days, symposiums, exhibitions, and this was a symposium that was held 2 years ago in the German University in Cairo, where I'm currently teaching. And it was mainly to highlight the validity of cities around the Mediterranean. And so many scholars, professionals, and professors joined from all across the Mediterranean. The aim was actually to join different professors, different academic, and different professionals from Asia, from Africa, and Europe. And I think this is the importance, or this is the main significance of the Mediterranean. And this is the privilege that we have, because the Mediterranean is actually is facing 3 different continents. And then another exhibition that was done where we studied with a group of researchers in the German University in Cairo, around 12 cities around the Mediterranean, from Beirut to the southern coast, Egypt, and then the northern coast, where we went to Greece and the canals around it, and so on. And all these studies actually highlighted really how the structure of cities are changing every day, and these challenges that we have, and how can we actually adapt to that, and how can we work together from different fields, from different disciplines, in order to solve or at least highlight some questions that need to be solved. So these are the cities that were studied two years ago, from Greece to, of course, the southern coast, to Beirut on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. And then, of course, in the middle, we did not forget about the Mediterranean itself as a hub with the islands it has. And here we highlighted the island of Cyprus, and we studied 3 cities there, Famagusta, Kyrenia, and Limassol. But not only, because we realized that it's not only the natural coast, the Mediterranean coast itself, but of course, the canals across the coast, where we have the Corinth Canal, and its effect on these cities, and its effect on the growth of population and the growth of city structures, and what uprising trends it comes with it. And the Suez Canal in the southern part in here, of course, linking to the Gulf, to the Red Sea, to the Gulf, and then to the Eastern Asia. So in this study, as I said, we categorize the cities in different bubbles, if I say. If I may say, for instance, one was the islands, Kyrenia, Famagusta, Limassol, in Cyprus, then the canals, Corinth, Isthmia, and Suez City, and then, of course, the new cities around the Mediterranean, which was found not more than 100 years ago, like Port Said, Port Fouad, just at the tip of the Suez Canal. And Beirut as a main city, actually, it was one of the oldest cities in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, where actually the ports of the Mediterranean started and the trades of the Mediterranean started. And we took it even not only to the Mediterranean coast, we dug in a bit and we went into the canal and to the Ismailia city. But then also we figured that why not to see the effect of this transition of the coast or of the Mediterranean on hinterlands. That's why we also studied Cairo, and we've seen, we completed the circle, if I may say. So it was a circle of the Mediterranean, but then it also, we expanded this circle to check hinterlands like Cairo and so on. But this was not really the aim. This was not the aim to study a city by itself, but actually the aspects and factors that drive the transition, the transformation of these cities and the different aspects, the social, the economic, political, the historic, the cultural, the geographic, and so on. And most importantly, the link between them. And at the end, of course, we came up with 2 main keywords for our research, which are socioeconomic and geopolitical. And these are what we are now expanding and studying. And of course, the link was always the coastline and how the coast is transitioning, transforming. And that's what I will try to highlight on. And at the end, of course, several exhibitions, and one of them actually will be published online in 2 days, and publications and so on. So here I want to highlight the difference between old cities and the contemporary city. I mean, the adaptive strategies to hold the whole transition around the Mediterranean in the 19th or the 20th century was by building the ports, constructing these ports, which started, as I said, on the Eastern Mediterranean coast, and then to adapt to the global economic change or transition or growth, I can say, the canals were built to have a shortcut and to construct maybe faster routes between cities or between continents, and from Asia to the Western Europe. But actually, these ports and canals are changing, because it was they were built in the 20th century, 19th century as a strategy to cope with the global transition in economic, political, and social growth and changes. But nowadays, actually, they are not core of development anymore. They are not the focal points over the world nowadays. Rather, they are becoming tool for development. And here I can highlight maybe in one very clear example that maybe some of us are aware of, some of us are not. Here it's Cairo in the 80s, in 1980s, and this is Cairo nowadays. We can see this green belt all, I mean, this is coming from the southern Egypt to the Mediterranean up in the north. And we can see how it's actually, the identity is being lost in whole Egypt. The green belt, the green areas, and even the natural growth. Because as we can see here, always in back maybe 15 years ago, 50 years ago, the growth was actually going from Cairo towards this part where the growth, the population growth, and the even the sprawl of the city was just growing along the green areas. But nowadays we can see how the green areas are lost. There are no more green areas. And basically today the city, I mean, if it's to be going in the same direction it was going in 50 years ago, it should be going towards Ismailia city, where this is the Suez Canal. But surprisingly, the new capital of Cairo, the new economic capital of Cairo, is being proposed just away from this natural growth of the city. And this raises many questions. But then if we look at a wider image of the Mediterranean and the whole world, we can actually understand what's happening, that it's actually now being stretched, the sprawl is not anymore going naturally towards, I mean, along what the people need, which actually they were building their settlements and growing along the green areas. And nowadays, no, it's going towards Suez City through the desert. And we can understand why if we look at the whole world and understand the role of the Suez City itself as an economic hub and how it's connected to different cities around the world, from the Middle East, Jordan, and then we have Palestine, we have then Turkey here, and then to Europe, and even going outside to the ocean. And here, of course, we don't forget about the new China Road, which, I mean, if cities nowadays are being changed economically, socially, physically, I mean, the structure of city itself, socially, and so on, and it's losing its identity. So what would happen if afterwards with the new China Road, which is coming from eastern China to the southern coast, to the northern coast of the Mediterranean towards Italy, of course going through the Suez. And here we can actually really understand why Cairo itself, I mean, I'm speaking now about Cairo because I'm living here, I'm doing my studies here as an example only, but of course this happens if we look deeper to the whole world, to the whole canals, if I may say now, which are becoming the most important hubs in the world. We can understand why cities are actually stretching towards the economic centers of the country. And this is maybe the main and new, it's not really a very new one, but nowadays is the most important thing that people cities are actually built over economic activities. And here even we can see the city of Athens, and this is the Corinth Canal, and we can see how it's important, but unfortunately the canal of Corinth is not active as it was expected to be, because it's very narrow and all the challenges it has with the link and the regional problems it has. But this also highlights the importance of the canal and how or what we should actually do next. But this is only until today, or until maybe last year, 2019. But what would happen now after COVID-19? What would happen actually with COVID-19 and all the tourism changes and the tourism directions and the cities around the Mediterranean which are changing, what would happen to the economy, and so on. And subsequently, the changes in the coast itself. So the coasts are actually changing, and what will happen to the China road afterwards. And here I can give maybe a very simple example of the city of Port Said and the city of Port Fuad in the northern Egypt, which was only founded it was only 100 years ago or so. But it was actually built because of the Suez Canal. Without the Suez Canal itself, the city was not to be here today. It was not to be realized. There would be no people. So the canal itself was the driver of this, was the factor of initiating this city. And this city is actually at the tip, just the tip between Asia, Africa, and facing Europe. So we can see the importance of the city. But of course, this is the Suez Canal linking to the city. But what we can see inside the city itself, because it was home for so many years for builders of the Suez Canal coming from England and France, we can see even different fabric inside the city itself. So we can see even the structure of the city. This is what's so-called the new city, and this is the old or the local city. So it's like this city is where people, outsiders are living, and this is where people from Egypt locals are living, and we can see the difference between the two structures. And this is only a very small city in terms of scale and in terms of population. So it's not really a home for so many people, but I mean, with its role and the whole structure and the challenges that it faces, not only as the structure of the infrastructure or the buildings and so on, but even with the land use itself, because we can see different land use structures within a very limited area. And this is causing even more problems to the city. So the question is, now after all this, because of only some economic activities 100 years ago or 200 years ago, so many cities started and just came up from nothing. So with the new road of China, with the new economic transition of the Mediterranean and the new cities that are coming, what new cities will appear next? What will happen to the structures of our cities today? And what would the sustainable development goals deal? How will it deal with it? And here, if I may say, but just to highlight one important aspect, if I go to one report of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development report, highlighting here the green areas per capita. This actually, I just came across this report last week when I was presenting a lecture in the American University in Cyprus about urban heat island, and we were surprised with the results actually, because even, for example, Barcelona, if we look at Barcelona, which we teach in universities as one of the sustainable cities, so Barcelona actually did not even reach to the it's 8.8 meters square per capita, per person, whilst the WHO, the World Health Organization, actually stated that in order to go sustainable, we need to have 9 meters square green area per capita. And of course, we can have a look at different cities like Angio, like even the city of Bari in Italy, which have 0.43 meters square per capita of green area. And here is Barcelona with 8.81. So even the green areas and the population itself are different from a place to another. Yes, we have very rapid growth. We have big growth over the cities, but the population itself is not distributed well. It's centralized in some areas only. And if we look only at the population of some cities or some countries, around the Mediterranean. We can see, for example, Egypt with around 100 million inhabitants, but there are around 25 million in Cairo only, in one city. So yes, the population is increasing rapidly, but it's concentrated in just very limited areas. And this is actually, of course, raising other problems and other challenges related to infrastructure, to sustainability, and to health issues, and so many others. But nowadays, we are witnessing even more problems in the region. If we look at the Mediterranean and understand it as three coasts, let's not look at the Mediterranean as countries around it and cities. Let's look at it as three coasts, and we can understand how the three coasts are actually so different than one another. So we can see nowadays, if we look at the news, what's happening in the northern Africa between Egypt to Libya to Morocco and so on, and even in Asia, what's happening in the Middle Eastern region nowadays, and how Europe, represented by Turkey and Greece, are actually interfering in all these problems, and what will be happening next. But in all this, let's not forget about the canals, because they are actually they will be the main role in all these things, but they are not highlighted. So we are actually growing. We are dealing with growth. We are dealing with globalized world, but we are forgetting about major links within this Mediterranean, which are the canals and the coastlines themselves, because nowadays, even if we look at the migration rates from Asia to Africa, or from the Middle East, I mean, to Africa and to Europe, we can understand the role of the coastal cities around it and the port cities. And here again, I highlight three main points, or three main spots in the Mediterranean that actually need to be highlighted more. We need to work with it more. And now, towards the end of my presentation, I just want to ask three questions. And these three questions are related to these three important points around the Mediterranean. And actually, the three questions are the first three questions that I started with. What are the forces that produce the transformation? How can the hesitant socioeconomic and geopolitical that are changing every day due to constant changes and constant trends every day happening around the world play a constructive role in the distribution of the population? And how can we actually distribute the population? And most importantly, again, how could cities adapt to the uprising trends? Because yes, new cities are being built, if I may say, in a sustainable way, but the old cities are totally neglected, and the whole old infrastructures are being just neglected, and nobody is actually looking at this, because we are looking at future. So we're looking at future cities. And in my opinion, coastlines drive the transformation in this post-urban era, and its role must be tackled more. And it must be tackled again as the port cities, as adaptive strategy was tackled a century ago. Today, we have to tackle the main role of the coastlines as major hubs for socioeconomic and the political and geographical cores. But how to protect our cities is the main question. So it was all about questions, and this is what we are trying to do in our lab, in our design lab, that we started with, a group of researchers to have a look at these several problems around the Mediterranean with the name of Transformation of the Mediterranean Urban Lab. So now I would love really to have discussion with the group. As I say, this is the aim actually of this presentation, not to give you more information, but actually to get and share more information. So thank you a lot for listening, and I'm open for questions, of course, and let's have a discussion if you wish.
Thank you, Husam. Perhaps if you stop screen sharing and then we can see you full screen.
Yes, of course. One second.
If people have questions or comments, then the chat box is open. So it'd be great to hear from you all. But perhaps I could just begin by asking this transnational perspective that you're bringing to bear. Are there political mechanisms in place political structures in place that allow for that kind of thinking to operate across national borders? Who at a political level is thinking about the Mediterranean as a territory?
Well, actually, nowadays, if you ask about politics, I mean, even the economy is driven by politics. Even the social growth is driven by politics. And the clear example I presented about Cairo and how it changed, I mean, totally changed, it's actually a political decision. If we look at how the southern coast of the Mediterranean, from Egypt to Morocco, Libya, and so on, I mean, what's happening today and all the colonization, if I may say, colonization or wars taking over, I mean, this is all driven by politics, and these politics are changing the economy, it's changing the shape of the city itself or the country itself, and so on. And of course, this is the, I think this is the main aim of the China Road, and this is perhaps the result afterwards of the COVID-19, because it's nowadays being used. Actually, it's a disease that is being used, a pandemic, to gain more money from different parties and so on. So really, I mean, politics is a very major aspect. I mean, integrated into everything.
But are there any transnational organizations which are thinking about these common conditions across multiple countries, or do you feel that they're being addressed on a country by country basis with little kind of awareness of what's happening next door?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it from an individual perspective, nowadays cities are not being seen from, I mean, case by case. It's never like this since, I mean, years and decades, because with the globalization trends, I mean, cities are not being seen as so, but there are obstacles. I mean, because I've been reading some reports about that, and there was a big project to be conducted by several organizations from Europe to the Middle East, but then suddenly, due to the COVID-19, all the funds were stopped, and all the projects have stopped, and there are no reasons for that. I mean, now it's time to take actions, but actually there is an error happening, and these actions are being stopped suddenly, and the funds are stopped. I mean, I think even the United Nations are busy with their own visions. The World Health Organization is busy with their own visions, every association, but now there are projects that are individually held. Like, for instance, if we even go to the scale of conferences, what is being highlighted in conferences nowadays, it's only different opinions about the situation around the world. But these aspects, these transitional aspects, are actually not being tackled at all. Of course, people are aware of that. Of course, professionals are aware of that. But this needs funds, and there are no funds nowadays, because funds or money are, I mean, oriented towards different directions nowadays, and so on. So I think no real organization or no real structures nowadays are being aware of this, or being tackling these problems. Yeah.
And so, who is the audience for your research? Who are you hoping to speak to and to feel mobilized by the work you're doing?
I think professionals in the field, urbanists, I mean, academics from all over the place, not only are in urban field, but because this is not an urban issue only. It's related, as you say, to politics. It's related to economy. It's related to technology, even. I mean, what we are doing now. How did we come into one place if it's not for technology? So I think all people should be actually collaborating, and that's why I'm presenting these ideas today here, and I'm hoping for discussion. I'm hoping for collaborations, even not only in the field, my field, urban planning, but any other field, because we are living in now a multidisciplinary world. It's not, you know, it's not related to one aspect, and that's what I highlighted when I said that the cities, the 10 or 12 cities we studied around the Mediterranean 2 years ago. Actually, it will grow. It's an ongoing study on cities, but at the end I said it's not about the cities, it's about the aspects. I highlighted social, economic, geographical, political, and everything, because this is what we need to study. This is what we need from cities, because cities is a structure where people live, yes, but they are affected by the different factors and different aspects within it. And these are the things that we need to tackle through different disciplines and different fields.
So is there I mean, you're from an architecture background, I think, Husam, originally.
Yeah.
And do you see a kind of a role for architects to contribute to this discussion? Or, I mean, at the moment, the work you were showing is very much of a territorial scale, but I guess you were looking at the historical structure of cities, which can suggest there's a kind of role for a much closer engagement with the building fabric.
Yeah, I think historians. I mean, it's really a place. The platform is without historians, this project would not, you know, would not go to the world, because the first slide I presented is about history, because that's what we need to understand first of all, our history, our identity, and then how we lost it, or if we did actually lose it or not, and what's happening next. So. Historians, of course, but as you said, it's more of a territorial scale. It's not a city scale. It's not a country scale. It's a global territorial aspect, and that's why even the title of the presentation is urban territorial. It's not Mediterranean territorial. It's not cities of the Mediterranean. It's not port cities. It's not coastline. It's the territory itself. And the Mediterranean actually is a hub for the whole world. I mean, if you look, it's the trading routes and the trading activities happening in the Mediterranean is the most in the whole world, because it's actually it's the hub, it's the crossroad. Yeah.
And of course, I mean, in the context of the kind of ongoing refugee crisis, the Mediterranean is often described as a border condition rather than as a hub, kind of in you know, most of the sort of the way it's currently represented in the media. I mean, do you find that the fact that half of the coastline is in the territory of the EU and half is not has complicated the opportunities for thinking of it as one continuous territory?
Can you repeat? You say about the?
Well, does the fact that half of the coastline that you were looking at is within the territory of the European Union, that must make it harder to begin thinking of the whole Mediterranean coastline as one condition, because it's so frequently perceived as a sort of border condition.
Well, but speaking of migrants, I mean, if you look at migration rates across the Mediterranean, I think Europe hosted most of these numbers. I mean, gradually Europe is even integrating in the maybe if I may say the Middle Eastern, you know, culture, and this was witnessed even. I don't know. Maybe I could have presented that the architectural identity itself across the Mediterranean, where we can see different styles. I mean, the Ottoman style, for example, that started in the Eastern Mediterranean, and nowadays we can see it in Italy. How come? We can see it even in Morocco. How did this happen? You know, this happened through the trading routes. This happened through the relation between cities and ports and so on. So nowadays, of course, these coastal cities play the role of the travel between countries, of course, and migrants are just the coastal line around the Mediterranean is hosting the biggest number of migrants around the whole three continents. And I think no. I mean, if we 20 years ago or 30 years ago, if we have seen the coastlines as coastlines or interfaces of three different continents, I would say okay. But nowadays, it's becoming one. It's becoming one part, and this is the real importance of the region. And I'm really happy that maybe a few years ago when I was doing my master's degree, I was struggling to find some studies highlighting the relation between the three continents. But nowadays, if you see the researchers, if you see the applications, it's always something territorial. It's always something highlighting the three continents, or even the world itself, the global aspect of the world. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
Interesting. I think we've seen quite in the Middle East. I think we've certainly seen a lot of kind of active work within architectural culture in the last 10 years, trying to describe and archive the architectural production in that part of the world. Particularly, I think I'm thinking of things like the Bahrain pavilion at the Venice Biennale kind of a few years ago, which was produced a very substantial catalogue of looking at the an architecture across Arab countries that had been produced in the 20th century and hadn't been well documented. And it would be, I could see a kind of role for a similar kind of there's a similar task which could be performed, I think, in the area that you're describing, identifying the common architectural tendencies or the cross currents between Sicily and Cyprus and Malta, and I'm sure there is a very particular architectural identity there, which would be, fascinating to kind of document and see what relevance it might still have today.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of there's an architect I'm very interested in, Austin St. Barb Harrison, who was resident in Cairo during the war and subsequently was tasked with developing the master plan for the reconstruction of Malta immediately after the war. And he writes a lot about it's a scheme which they worked on for 3 years but didn't get realized because of the politics of Maltese independence. But he was looking very actively at Sicily as a model for the kind of architecture that they wanted to build in Malta, which he saw as representative of a kind of synthesis of multiple different architectural cultures which were present in the Mediterranean. So I think there's a very rich conversation there that you're plugging into. Do we have any questions, Sam? If you have, then just ping me, identify yourself in the chat box, and I will come to you. And if not, we may move on, I'm afraid. But I know that this will find another audience on YouTube where we'll put the recording up tomorrow. But no, we have an uncharacteristically shy bunch of participants tonight, I'm afraid. Husam, thank you so much, though. So what's the next stage for you of the research? What's your plan next?
Well, next we are working on a international conference here in Cairo, which we hope to happen, with this situation. Would be in November, and it's actually it's a cooperation between us, between another university in Turkey and another university also in the UK, with one professor in the UK. So we are hoping to bring these aspects into being, so to highlight it and to have such an interdisciplinary discourse.